Hi everybody, thank you very much for your time. So following on from obviously previous years, this is obviously NXTBLD 2.0, so very pleased to be here with the helps of Intel and NVIDIA. So I'm a senior workstation technologist working for Lenovo, UK and Ireland. My job as Mr. Workstation UK is to help you guys, point you guys in the right direction, making sure you make the best out of the software packages you have by delivering the very greatest and latest hardware technologies to drive you guys through to the end game. So I'm going to run through some things today, enhancing performance. It's quite a broad subject, but what we're going to do is cover off workstations, what they are, how they're used, and how best you can then invest in the right products at the right time to move forward with your projects. So sort of the evolution of design. So the last few years seen a lot of changes in how people work, basic functionality, sustainable, now intelligence as well, looking obviously the Internet of Things, traffic management, smart cities as we've discussed before. Everything in line here needs a slightly different change in hardware. We do lots of different shapes and sizes, everything from a tiny little box, very powerful laptops on some of our high-end platforms, you can see them on the booth. But there's a different shape and size piece of hardware for everyone's workflow. No two workstations can be configured the same. Everyone in this room today might have a different requirement, slightly different specification. We're talking 3.5 million possible configurations. So we're here to help you and point you in the right direction, be it Lenovo ThinkStation or ThinkPad. So making the right choice. It's not as simple as it sounds. There's lots of things to look at. It can get very complex very, very quickly. So the speeds and feeds, I've tried to keep it at a fairly high level, but we can answer any questions at the end. So this is as complex as it's going to get, so apologies if you're obviously waiting for coffee. But essentially the basics of computer hardware. So we have system-level hardware, the components, the actual graphic system inside, all the noughts and ones, the languages that make it talk and work together, what we call your BIOS, your basic input-output system. You then have Windows operating system, which everyone is familiar with. Your system drivers, your graphics drivers. You then have different types of overlays depending on whether it's OpenGL or DirectX. Your CAD applications, your display user interface, and then your software and components on top, the expensive bit. But essentially, that can get very, very complex very, very quickly, and having all those different levels talking correctly at the right time, at the right speed, driving through efficiencies, can be very, very complex at times. So when we look at it, that's one application. We run 7 different models of ThinkStation, 4 different models of ThinkPad, different graphics drivers, different versions of operating systems, different versions of software. You're talking very, very, millions of possible configurations. So we always make sure that everything we provide is ISV certified. So by every independent software vendor, all the platforms that we recommend are fully qualified end-to-end for the software and applications that you will run. So confused. Hopefully there's a few show of hands, but essentially I know I can be at times, and I do this for a living, so I appreciate that sometimes hardware can be a little bit boring, but it's really important to understand where it sits in your workflow because it can have the biggest impact on project and timescales. So some simple facts. So can everybody see a green car on the left-hand side of the screen? Yes? Can everybody see that green car on the right-hand side of the screen? Right. They're both green cars. They both have 4 wheels. They both have a driver, they both have brakes, but essentially they're 2 completely different types of vehicles. Would you all agree? Yeah? Okay, so just like the 2 cars there, not all software is created equal, okay? So some crave CPU speed, so the dragster on the right-hand side is the speed, the gigahertz of a CPU. We're experiencing sort of clock speeds now, 4.5 gigahertz and above. It's all about the dragster. But you look at other software packages demand CPU cores. So the 4-wheel drive on the left-hand side, sometimes more cores can be faster. Memory become a big bottleneck. You can fit a lot more people inside the 4x4 than you can in the dragster. If you're transmitting just one person, that's the quickest way to get from A to B. If you want to stop and go around corners, I certainly wouldn't want to be on this car on the right-hand side. Okay? So never underestimate the power of the GPU. So as a great example, the car on the left-hand side is actually photorealistic. It's been rendered on an NVIDIA GPU, whereas the car on the right-hand side is a photograph itself. So when it comes to the workstation, it's all about finding that balance. If I ask you to go out shopping and just buy a green car, in theory, buying either of those, you've bought a green car. You've ticked a box. Your IT guys might have bought this one, when in fact you guys need the other one. So it's all about finding that right balance and finding the right sort of solution. And therefore, cheap can become very expensive. That dragster costs multi-million pounds. The Audi Quattro is nowhere near that. But that's the most suitable solution for certain types of workflow. So when it comes to configuring a workstation, it's all about this recipe for success. So we can help and point you in the right direction. So part of my role within Lenovo is to work with customers, pre-sales consultancy, making sure that we pick from our portfolio the most appropriate solution for their needs, making sure they don't overspec, overspend, and essentially then invest in the wrong platform. So I've put together some sort of recipe cards of how to help you guys move forward. So when it comes to recipes for success, inside a workstation, there's lots of components, hundreds at times, but we have a CPU. Typically, you would describe that versus gigahertz versus maybe CPU cores as common phrases. You then have memory. There's different types of memory, but we recommend a certain amount of memory, and we're saying 4 gigabytes per core. Then you have graphics, lots of different sorts of graphics, but essentially it's features, workflow, depending on what you're doing. Cracking a walnut of a sledgehammer can be great, not necessarily fantastic value for money, so it's always about finding the graphical card that has the workflow and features that match what you're doing. And when it comes to storage, the amount of storage you keep on a system. So we're working now with the new generation of PCI Express SSDs. And they're all equal. So that equal square there, each one is equally important. A recipe for failure might be to go with a massive CPU, just enough memory to get by, a small graphics card, and a huge hard disk. You've still selected those 4 components, but they're all the wrong models. So that's the dragster. You've got too big a CPU, you've spec'd it in the wrong way. It's still a working PC or workstation, but it's not matched to your particular workflow. So when we go back to sort of recipes for success, Lenovo ThinkStation, they're all built around balanced configurations. So our ThinkPad and ThinkStation workstations, we've developed them to give you the best value, maximum performance every day, no matter what the type of workflow. So going back to the success element, we can pick out each one individually, but graphics is more important now than it ever has been before. And the GPU, the graphical processor unit, working with NVIDIA, you can now do photorealistic design, real time in the design work. You move away from sort of wireframe. You can actually work with photorealistic graphics within the viewport itself. You're doing real-time visualization and rendering. So we've got a demonstration out in our booth. We've got 4K real-time rendered using artificial intelligence that gives you literally instantaneous feedback. So you don't have to wait to get those pre-rendered frames. You can now do that real-time. VR and design collaboration. I was here last year talking about virtual reality. It's now mainstream in everybody's workflow. We're doing that now with collaboration, so people can work with VR from multiple different locations. So it's important now having VR-ready platforms maybe in different departments in different countries rather than just as one core element within an organization. We're working now at 4K. 5K and 8K are common as well. You want to future-proof yourself. You need to make sure your graphics card is built to handle all the latest software that runs today and the projects you may there run for sort of next year and the year beyond. And then looking at things like artificial intelligence, deep learning, smart cities, generative design. You now need to make sure that, again, your graphics card is built to future-proof yourself, knowing that the software is going to make some big changes in the coming months. And then working with mobile working. So, the ThinkPad P series, our high-performance mobile workstations, they've been around for a number of years, but we're now introducing platforms that you can do all this great technology in a small, compact platform. So we launched a product today, our ThinkPad P52, that's our smallest 15-inch mobile workstation to support virtual reality. So we're now able to do VR in a very portable sort of 2.5 kilo platform. So I'd recommend you guys come on the booth and take a look. But you can have all of this now within any standard platform, be it desktop or be it laptop. There's no compromise now in terms of where you go, be it desk-bound or on more mobile. And we're using NVIDIA Quadro graphics end-to-end, and we have their entire portfolio available, depending on what you guys would need from a platform perspective. So the recipe card, I've picked out kind of 3 common ones, 3 common sort of disciplines really where workstations would go into. These are an exact fit based on our requirements for these standard, but we can optimize these depending on what your unique requirements are. But essentially, from a CPU perspective, Intel Xeon, they've released a new version, the W series Xeon CPUs that support very fast clock speeds. So we do a model of CPU. It's based around clock speed and not core count, because most elements, 3D BIM, it's driven by its clock speed. So remember the dragster. We only need 4 seats, so we can go with a dragster, and we're offering 4.5 gigahertz as a clock speed. So our fastest, most powerful sort of Revit sort of 3D BIM platform. We're going to pair that with quad-channel memory. So we've gone with 32 gig as an entry-level point, and we're going to go with 4 memory modules to give you the maximum possible performance. Graphics-wise, we're using NVIDIA, and depending on the size of projects, depending on the complexity levels you need, you can offer a 4 or an 8 gigabyte GPU. The NVIDIA Quadro P2000 is actually 5 gigabytes, and then we're offering the P4000, which is a higher-end VR-ready 8 gigabyte card. So there's 2 variants depending on whether it's an entry or a mid-style platform you would need. And we're using the NVMe storage drives. So these are PCI Express SSDs. They're 6 times faster than a standard SSD, and they plug directly into the workstation. So they're extremely fast. I'd almost say stupid fast. And we'd recommend a minimum size of 256 gigabytes. And then the platform here we're recommending for those types of software applications, this would be our ThinkStation P520. And it gives everybody then the best scalability, something they can grow into. You can add extra memory, you can add more graphics, you can add more storage. But from a foundation perspective, it gives you the best possible performance out of the box. And it is our fastest, sort of Revit, sort of MicroStation style workstation. Recipe card number 2, so we're kind of going up a level now, sort of design review, some of the sort of the creative elements to kind of come in. So we're using the same model of CPU, the Xeon W series branded, but we've gone up a level. So we're offering the same clock speed, but we've gone from 4 to 8 CPU cores. So for those of you doing 3D rendering, simulation, analysis tasks, then this can be twice as fast. Within the same platform, the same aesthetics, in the office you could have one of each workstation and you wouldn't know until you look under the hood, but essentially this has got twice the amount of muscle. We've doubled the memory using quad channel memory again, 64 gig. Graphics, we've gone up a level. The P5000 here for VR is our highest sort of run rate, our most recommended card for VR. Very, very powerful, very, very scalable, supports 2 cards if needed. It's NVIDIA's most popular card for sort of 3D BIM and VR in this space. I'm using the same storage drives as before, but we've increased the capacity. This is our highest sort of run rate, I guess, the most popular workstation. It sort of flexes its muscles depending on where you need it. It's very versatile and recommended for those sorts of style of applications when you're moving up the stack in terms of the creative and the visualization side. Recipe card number 3, really. So this is the higher end space. This is where people tend to almost like write a blank check. They don't know where to go. Typically, a project needs to be completed. Everybody's backed into a corner, so you need that sort of unit for that sort of heavy lifting. So we're using now a different type of CPU. There's now 2 CPUs in this box. So there's workstations in the market space today, our ThinkStation P720, P920 that can support 2 CPUs. So they can be twice as fast as anything else. There's various different models available. We're talking 56 different models of CPU. But this product here has 28 cores, 2 14-core CPUs. We're comparing it with a little bit more memory, so we've gone up 50% up to 96 gigabytes. But this is 6-channel memory, so it's even wider. So imagine a motorway with 6 lanes versus 4. You'll be able to transfer your traffic much quicker. We're using NVIDIA Quadro graphics again, but we can support up to 3 GPUs in this box. So if you're doing something with GPU rendering, then you can support a very large number of GPU cores in here, almost 10,000 cores. It becomes almost a desk-side supercomputer. So the platform we have out on the booth or in the AI demo is using the NVIDIA, the GV100 GPU. So their most powerful GPU for visualization and rendering. And then we've paired this again with more storage drives. And again, this sort of workstation wouldn't necessarily come in necessarily cheap, but it's very much how you would divvy that up, where you need to spend your money, and obviously minimum of 512 gigs on the SSD. So pretty much any list of software applications, you run it on a specification like that, that would run every single software, every single sort of workflow that you would have. These types of solutions, we offer hundreds of possible scenarios here, so this is very much sort of a guideline depending on those types of software, and again, the size and complexity of the projects that you will work with. And then the last one is kind of a blank sheet of paper, really, our blank check. Depending on what you need to do, we have a platform that is, the industry's fastest, the industry's most scalable piece of computing hardware. This can be configured to, 2 terabytes of memory, hundreds of CPU cores in a single desktop. So depending on what you need to do, this is the ultimate workstation to configure it with. Base level, you can start this box from around the £1,500 mark, but it is possible to configure it to tens and 20s of thousands of pounds if needed. But it is the most scalable, the most fastest workstation that we do. So again, when you're in this sort of level, when you're looking at deep learning and AI, it's very much a consultative one-to-one approach. We wouldn't necessarily have a recipe card because every use case is different. So these sorts of scenarios, when I would get involved and we would work with customers, discuss what they're trying to achieve, budgets, and then obviously work backwards from there. So real world savings really. So just as an example, we've thrown around various different specifications. Hardware can be perceived as quite expensive. Software is even more expensive. If you look at certain software vendors that have a subscription model, something as a service, you pay per month. So just as an example, our Recipe Card One, our most popular 3D BIM platform, works out over 3 years at £1.35 a day. I appreciate I'm holding you all back from the coffee. So essentially, in the background here, this is half the cost of a cup of coffee, and it's every day. And we can make you guys almost guaranteed to save you money. You can work 3, 4, 5 times faster than you ever have done, for half the price of a cup of coffee. We're delivering you performance day in, day out. So essentially, we can almost guarantee to save customers money by just evaluating and just looking at, well, what hardware am I running? Can I run faster? Those slowdowns, those projects, those bottlenecks, you waiting, whether it's go for a cigarette or go for a coffee, those bottlenecks can be removed. You can make massive time savings. We're seeing architects' practices where, they've gone, and they're shaving weeks and weeks off projects just by making sure they've got the right hardware in the right place at the right time. Everything's future-proofed. It's scalable. It's whisper quiet. So all these supercomputers, the desk-side supercomputers, they're not jet engines. All of these run whisper quiet. Appreciate the booth outside can be quite noisy, but everything runs, under the desk. It's small, it's compact, it's scalable. Everything that you would need to do, and then everything is future-proofed. So you never have to worry that what you're going to buy today is going to be out of date. I could have a slot here next year and talk about something else, and things always move on. But every platform we've developed is future-proofed. So you've got a full 3 years to look at evaluate the products and scale as your likely needs will grow. Because you will take on new work, you'll take on bigger projects, things will move. You'll move from 2K to 4K, you'll work with VR, you'll work with the next generation software. We know where things are going, and obviously we can help you and work in that right direction. And then ISV certified. So yeah, today and tomorrow is demanding 3D workflows. I'd like to say I've got a crystal ball here that's going to show you exactly what hardware you will need next year. But essentially, best endeavors, you have to invest and make sure that future-proofing is part of that. So we work and obviously with you to make sure that any investment you make is very much an investment. So it stays with you and always will work with you over the next sort of 2 or 3 years. And then saving you money every day. So the cost of a cup of Starbucks, it's cheaper than not investing. So I'd have a little mini competition that if you come and see us out on the booth, we can pretty much guarantee to save you money, or I'll give you a cup of coffee for free. Essentially, there is a reason why, new workstation comes out, we will have a new product in 12 months, we'll have a new product in 2 years' time, as a rolling life cycle of platforms. Now is a really good time to invest with new platforms, with new technology, moving forward with all the great discussion topics you've seen here today, to make sure then that you're in the best place to go out, win business, be more profitable, and ultimately, get stuff done much faster. So as a challenge, so free workstation advice and consultancy. So there's my contact details on the screen. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to grab me on email, cell phone, or on Twitter. We're here to help at the end of the day. We believe we can add a lot of value to customers here, making sure that you're pointing you guys in the right direction. So again, any investments that you make on the hardware side, aren't a waste at all. So any questions? We've got equipment on the booth, so anyone wants to have a play or have a demo, come and see us. And I believe now we've got coffee outside. Thank you very much.